The coffee cup shattered against the wall, missing David Miller's head by inches. "Security, get this man out of my building." Victoria Chen's voice cut through the executive floor like a blade. David stood there in his faded janitor uniform, mop still in hand, as two guards grabbed his arms. His badge, the one he'd worn for 3 years, was ripped from his chest. "Ms. Chen, please, I can explain. You sold us out. You're done. What satisfies next would satisfies every satisfies, in that satisfies room satisfies. Satisfies, but not in the way satisfies anyone. Satisfies expected. If you're enjoying this story, drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what satisfies next. The coffee cup shattered against the wall, and David Miller didn't flinch. He'd learned a long time ago that flinching only made things worse. In the Marines, they'd taught him that. In life, he'd learned it the hard way. Victoria Chen stood behind her massive desk, her chest heaving with rage. At 35, she was one of the youngest CEOs in Silicon Valley, and right now, every bit of that power was directed at the 52-year-old janitor standing in her doorway. "I asked you a simple question," Victoria said, her voice dropping to something almost more frightening than the screaming. "How much did they pay you?" David held her gaze. "I don't know what you're talking about, Ms. Chen." "Don't!" She held up her hand. "Don't you dare stand there and lie to my face. I have the logs. I have the footage. I have everything I need to put you in prison." David felt his heart hammering against his ribs, but he kept his voice steady. "Then you have the wrong man." Victoria laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "The wrong man. You're the only person in this building after midnight. You're the only one with access to every floor. And somehow, mysteriously, our entire client database ended up in the hands of our biggest competitor." She slammed her palm on the desk. "Explain that to me, Mr. Miller. Explain how that's possible if you're the wrong man." "I clean offices, Ms. Chen. I empty trash cans. I mop floors. That's what I do. That's what you used to do." Victoria pressed a button on her phone. "Security. I need someone on the executive floor. Now." David's mind raced. 3 years. 3 years he'd worked at Chen Technologies, invisible as the wallpaper. 3 years of watching people step over his mop bucket without a glance, of hearing conversations stop when he entered a room, of being looked through like he was made of glass. And now, finally, someone was looking at him. Just not the way he'd hoped. "Ms. Chen, I'm asking you, please, just listen to me for 1 minute. You have 30 seconds. David took a breath. "Someone is framing me. I don't know who, and I don't know why, but I know what I've seen in this building. Things that don't add up. Things that..." 20 seconds. "Your head of IT security, Marcus Webb. He's been..." Victoria's expression turned to ice. Don't you dare try to blame this on Marcus. He's the one who discovered the leak. He's the one who traced it back to you." "Of course he did," David said quietly. That's exactly what he wanted. The door behind David burst open. 2 security guards, young guys, half his age, twice his weight in muscle, grabbed him by the arms. "Ms. Chen, wait. Get him out of here," Victoria said, already turning away. "And call the police. I want him arrested for corporate espionage." "I have a daughter," David said, and something in his voice made Victoria pause. "She's 7 years old. Her mother died 3 years ago. I'm all she has." Victoria turned back, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something human. Then it was gone. "You should have thought about her before you betrayed this company," she said. "Get him out." The guards dragged David toward the elevator. People had gathered now. Executives, assistants, junior analysts, all watching the janitor being hauled away like a criminal. Some were whispering, some were smirking. David caught a glimpse of Marcus Webb standing near the water cooler, his arms crossed, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. Their eyes met. Marcus raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. And David knew with absolute certainty that he was looking at the man who had destroyed his life. The ride down in the elevator was silent, except for David's own breathing and the nervous shuffling of the two guards. "I know you're just doing your jobs," David said quietly. Neither guard responded. "I didn't do this. Whatever they told you, whatever evidence they showed you, it's not real." The younger guard, a kid who couldn't have been more than 25, cleared his throat. "Sir, we're not supposed to talk to you." "I understand." David nodded slowly. "But when the truth comes out, and it will, I want you to remember that I told you. I'm not a thief. I'm not a spy. I'm a father trying to provide for his daughter. That's all I've ever been." The elevator doors opened onto the lobby. A small crowd had already formed. Word traveled fast in a building full of people with smartphones. David walked between the two guards past the reception desk, where the pretty young woman who'd never once said good morning to him was now filming on her phone, past the coffee bar, where he'd mopped up countless spills, past the enormous portrait of Victoria Chen's father that dominated the east wall. Chen Wei. The man who'd built this company from nothing. The man who died 2 years ago and left his empire to his only daughter. David had read about him once in a magazine he'd found in the recycling bin. Chen Wei had started as a factory worker in Taiwan. He'd swept floors and cleaned toilets before he'd built his first computer in a garage in Palo Alto. David wondered if Chen Wei had ever been looked at the way people were looking at him right now. Probably, he thought. Probably 1,000 times. The difference was that Chen Wei had fought back. He'd proven them all wrong, and David was going to do the same thing. The police didn't arrest him. Not yet, anyway. Victoria had apparently decided that the scandal of a public arrest would be worse than simply firing him and letting the legal department handle things quietly. David walked out of Chen Technologies with nothing but his car keys and his wallet. His locker, where he'd kept a photo of Lily, a granola bar, and 3 years' worth of notes about strange things he'd noticed in the building, was being secured as evidence. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbor who watched Lily after school. "Everything okay?" "You're usually not this late," David typed back with shaking fingers. "On my way. Sorry. Long day." Long day. The understatement of the century. He sat in his 15-year-old Honda Civic and stared at the steering wheel for a full minute before he trusted himself to drive. His hands were trembling, his chest felt tight, and somewhere behind his eyes a pressure was building that he hadn't felt since the day Sarah died. He would not cry, he would not break down. He had a daughter to take care of, a daughter who was waiting for him, probably working on her homework. Probably hungry for dinner, definitely wondering why Daddy was so late. David turned the key and pulled out of the parking lot for the last time. Lily was drawing when he walked in. She looked up with those big brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, and her whole face lit up. "Daddy." "Hey, Pumpkin." David knelt down and wrapped his arms around her, holding on a little tighter than usual, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "You're squishing me," Lily giggled. "Sorry." He loosened his grip but didn't let go. "How was school?" "Good. We learned about planets. Did you know Jupiter has 67 moons? 67? That's like a lot." "That is a lot." Mrs. Patterson appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was 73, widowed, and had been watching Lily since Sarah's funeral, when she'd simply shown up at David's door and announced that she was going to help whether he liked it or not. She took one look at David's face, and her expression shifted. "Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go wash your hands for dinner? I made mac and cheese." "The orange kind. The orange kind." Lily scrambled off toward the bathroom, and Mrs. Patterson crossed the room to stand in front of David. "What happened?" David shook his head. "Not now, please." "David." "I'll tell you tomorrow, Eleanor. I promise. Right now, I just need to have dinner with my daughter and pretend everything is fine." Mrs. Patterson studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but you call me if you need anything. Anything at all." "I will." She gathered her purse and her sweater, pausing at the door. "Whatever it is, David, you'll get through it. You always do." David wished he could believe her. Dinner was quiet. Lily chattered about school, about her best friend Maya, about the art project she was working on for the spring fair. David nodded and smiled and asked questions in all the right places, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. He kept seeing Marcus Webb's face, that smug little smile, that mock toast with the coffee cup. Marcus Webb had been at Chen Technologies for 5 years. He was the golden boy, charming, brilliant, connected. Rumor had it he and Victoria were more than just colleagues, though nobody could confirm it. He drove a Tesla, wore suits that cost more than David's monthly rent, and had never once acknowledged David's existence. Until 6 months ago. 6 months ago, David had been cleaning the server room, one of the few areas of the building he was allowed to enter after hours, when he'd noticed something strange. A program running in the background, hidden behind layers of normal operations. A program that was copying files and sending them somewhere outside the building. David was no IT expert. He'd barely finished high school before joining the Marines, and his tech skills consisted mainly of knowing how to use email and Google. But he'd spent enough time around computers to know when something looked wrong. He'd tried to report it. He'd sent an email to the IT department. No response. He'd tried to schedule a meeting with building security. They'd laughed him off. He'd even approached Marcus Webb directly one morning, stopping him in the hallway with a, "Sir, I think I found something that might be important." Marcus had looked at him like he was a bug on a windshield. "Found something? Like what, a better brand of floor wax?" "No, sir, in the server room. There's a program." "Look, buddy, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but the server room is way above your pay grade. Just stick to mopping, okay?" And that had been that. So David had started investigating on his own. Night after night, he'd stayed late watching, noting, documenting. He'd figured out which executive offices the program was accessing. He'd tracked the timing of the data transfers. He'd even managed to take photos of the screen when the hidden program was running. All of that evidence was now sitting in his locker, which meant it was sitting in the hands of the very person who was trying to frame him. "Daddy." David blinked. Lily was staring at him, a forkful of macaroni suspended in midair. "Sorry, Pumpkin. What did you say?" "I said, are you okay?" "You look sad." David reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm okay. Just thinking about grown-up stuff." "Is it about work? Mrs. Patterson says you work too hard." "Does she now?" Lily nodded solemnly. "She says you need a vacation. Maybe we could go to the beach. Mom always liked the beach." The mention of Sarah hit David like a punch to the chest. 3 years, and it still caught him off guard sometimes. "Yeah," he said softly. "She did. Maybe we could go for her birthday. It's coming up right June 15th. "That's right. You remembered?" "Of course I remembered." Lily looked offended. "She's my mom." David smiled, and for the first time since that coffee cup had shattered against the wall, he felt something other than despair. "Tell you what, Pumpkin, let's make a plan. Save up some money, find a nice beach somewhere, and go for a whole weekend. Just you and me." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? You promise?" "I promise." It was a promise he had no idea how to keep. He'd just lost his job. He had maybe 2 months' worth of savings in the bank. And in a few days, Victoria Chen's lawyers would probably be filing charges that would make him unemployable forever. But right now, looking at his daughter's hopeful face, none of that mattered. He would figure it out. He always did. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, David sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen. He wrote down everything he knew. The hidden program, the data transfers, the dates and times, the offices that had been accessed, Marcus Webb's dismissive response, Victoria Chen's accusation. Then he wrote down everything he didn't know. How had Marcus pulled it off without getting caught? Why had he chosen to frame the janitor? What was he planning to do with the stolen data? And most importantly, How was David supposed to prove any of this without access to the building, the servers, or any of the evidence he'd gathered? He stared at the list until his eyes burned. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. David hesitated, then answered. Hello, David Miller. The voice was old, gruff, familiar. Frank, is that you? Frank Morrison was the night security guard at Chen Technologies. 68 years old, Vietnam veteran, and the only person in that entire building who had ever treated David like a human being. They'd shared coffee and conversation during countless late nights talking about the Marines, about life, about raising kids in a world that didn't make sense anymore. Yeah, it's me. You okay? David laughed bitterly. Not really, Frank. Did you hear what happened? I heard. That's why I'm calling. Frank's voice dropped lower. Listen, I don't have much time. I'm still on shift and the new guy is watching me like a hawk, but I wanted you to know I don't believe it. What? The stuff they're saying about you. It's bull. I've known you for 3 years, David. You're not a thief. You're not a spy. You're a good man who got dealt a bad hand. David felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you, Frank. You don't know how much that means. I ain't finished. I've been watching Marcus Webb for a while now. Something about that guy never sat right with me. Too smooth, you know, too perfect. And tonight after they dragged you out of here, I saw him. Saw him doing what? Going into the server room, at midnight, alone. David sat up straighter. Frank, are you sure? I'm old, David. I ain't blind. And I know what I saw. That son of a gun is up to something, and I think you got caught in the middle of it. Can you? David stopped himself. He couldn't ask Frank to risk his job. The man was 2 years from retirement, probably needed the income even more than David did. But Frank seemed to read his mind. I can't do much, he said. But I can watch. And I can tell you what I see. That's the least I can do for a fellow soldier. Frank, I don't want you to get in trouble. Too late for that. I've been in trouble my whole life. There was a dry chuckle on the other end of the line. Get some sleep, David. Take care of that little girl of yours, and don't give up. You hear me? Don't you dare give up. The line went dead. David stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he picked up his pen and added one more line to the legal pad, Frank Morrison. Night security. Alley. The next morning, David woke up to 17 text messages and 32 emails. Word had gotten out. Most of the messages were from people he barely knew. Former co-workers from his IT days, distant relatives, random acquaintances, all asking if it was true, if he'd really been a corporate spy this whole time. A few were from reporters. One was from a lawyer named Gerald Hayes, offering his services on contingency and promising to fight for the little guy. David deleted them all. He made breakfast for Lily, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, the same breakfast he'd made every morning since Sarah died, and drove her to school with a smile on his face that felt like it might crack at any moment. Have a good day, Pumpkin. You too, Daddy. Lily paused before getting out of the car. Daddy. Yeah. Whatever the grown-up stuff is, it's going to be okay. That's what Mom always said, right? Everything works out in the end. David swallowed hard. That's right, sweetheart. That's exactly what she said. He watched her skip through the school gates, her backpack bouncing with each step, and he thought about Sarah. Sarah, who had been diagnosed with cancer 6 months after Lily was born. Sarah, who had fought for 5 years with every ounce of strength she had. Sarah, who had made him promise in those final terrible days that he would take care of their daughter no matter what. I'm trying, David whispered to the empty car. I'm trying so hard. The rest of the day was a blur of phone calls and paperwork. David called a lawyer, not Gerald Hayes, but a woman named Patricia Okonkwo, who had been recommended by Frank years ago for a workers' comp case. She listened to his story without interrupting, asked a few pointed questions, and then sighed heavily. Mr. Miller, I'm going to be honest with you. Right now, the evidence is against you. Chen Technologies has security footage access logs and a very motivated legal team. Without concrete proof of this Marcus Webb's involvement, it's going to be an uphill battle. I had proof. In my locker. Photos, notes, dates. Which is now in their possession, and I'm guessing they've already lost anything that might help your case. David closed his eyes. So, what do I do? Right now, nothing. Don't talk to reporters. Don't post anything on social media. Don't try to contact anyone at Chen Technologies. Let me do some digging and see what we're working with. And if you can't find anything, Patricia paused. Then we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. I wish I had better news. After he hung up, David sat in his empty apartment and stared at the wall. The rent was due in 2 weeks. Lily's school tuition payment was coming up at the end of the month. His car insurance, his phone bill, the credit card he'd used to pay for Sarah's funeral 3 years ago, which he was still slowly paying off. He had maybe $6,000 in savings. It wouldn't last 2 months. At 3 o'clock, David picked up Lily from school. At 4 o'clock, they went to the park where Lily played on the swings, while David sat on a bench and tried not to think about how quickly everything was falling apart. At 5 o'clock, his phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello? David Miller, this is Rebecca Torres, assistant to Victoria Chen. Ms. Chen would like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. David almost dropped the phone. A meeting? I thought I was fired. You are. But Ms. Chen has some additional questions. Will you be available? Every instinct told him to say no, to hang up, call Patricia, and let the lawyers handle it. But something else told him this might be his only chance. I'll be there. Good. Come to the main entrance. Security will escort you up. The line went dead. David stared at the phone, his heart pounding. What did Victoria Chen want? More accusations? A confession, or something else entirely? He didn't know. But tomorrow, he was going to find out. That night, David tucked Lily into bed and sat on the edge of her mattress for their nightly talk. Daddy. Lily said, her eyes already heavy with sleep. Yeah, Pumpkin. Are you going back to work tomorrow? David hesitated. I have a meeting with my boss. The one you said was pretty? David almost laughed. He'd mentioned Victoria Chen exactly once months ago, and Lily had apparently filed it away in that steel trap memory of hers. Yeah, her. Is she nice? David thought about the coffee cup shattering against the wall, the fury in Victoria's eyes, the coldness in her voice when she'd told him to get out. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but I'm going to find out. Lily nodded sleepily. That's good. You should always find out before you decide if someone's nice or not. That's what Mrs. Patterson says. Mrs. Patterson is a smart lady. She is. Lily yawned. Daddy? Yeah. I love you. David leaned down and kissed her forehead. I love you too, Pumpkin. More than anything in the whole world. More than Jupiter's 67 moons. More than all the moons in the entire universe. Lily smiled and closed her eyes. David sat there for a long moment, watching her breathe, memorizing the curve of her cheek and the way her hair spread across the pillow. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever Victoria Chen said, whatever accusations were made, whatever his future held, he was going to fight. Not for himself, for her, for the promise he'd made to Sarah, for the little girl who believed that everything would work out in the end, because that's what her mother had always said. David stood up, turned off the light, and walked out of the room. Tomorrow, the battle would begin, and he was ready. David arrived at Chen Technologies at 8:45 the next morning. He'd worn his only suit, a navy blue one he'd bought for Sarah's funeral 3 years ago. It was slightly too big now. He'd lost weight since then, the kind of weight that grief in single parenthood slowly carved away. But it was clean pressed, and it made him feel like something other than a janitor for the first time in years. The security guard at the front desk was new. Young guy couldn't have been more than 22, with a crisp uniform and an expression that suggested he'd already heard all about the disgraced janitor who'd sold out the company. David Miller. David said. "I have a meeting with Ms. Chen." The guard checked his computer, then picked up his phone. "Yeah, he's here." A pause. "Okay, got it." He hung up and gestured toward the elevators. "Someone will meet you on the executive floor." "Thanks." David walked toward the elevators, aware of the eyes following him. The lobby was busier than he'd ever seen it, or maybe it just felt that way because everyone seemed to be staring. A few people whispered. One woman actually pointed. He kept his head up and his shoulders back. "Marines don't flinch," he reminded himself. "Marines don't break." The elevator doors opened, and David stepped inside. The ride to the executive floor felt longer than it ever had when he'd been pushing a mop bucket. Every floor that dinged past was another moment to second-guess himself. Another opportunity to wonder what the hell he was walking into. When the doors finally opened, Marcus Webb was waiting for him. "David?" Marcus smiled that perfect smile, all white teeth and practiced charm. "Good to see you again. Ms. Chen asked me to escort you to her office." David's hands curled into fists at his sides. "I know where her office is. I cleaned it for 3 years." "Of course you did." Marcus's smile didn't waver. "But company policy. You understand." They walked in silence down the hallway David had mopped 1,000 times. Past the conference room, where he'd emptied trash cans while executives argued about quarterly projections. Past the break room, where he'd scrubbed coffee stains out of the carpet while people complained about their stock options. Past the server room, where he'd discovered the truth. "You know," Marcus said casually, "I always thought you were smarter than the average janitor. The way you watched everything, the way you listened." David said nothing. "I suppose that's what made you such a good spy, right? All those late nights, all that access? Must have been tempting." David stopped walking. "I'm not a spy, Marcus, and we both know it." Marcus turned to face him, that smile still frozen in place. "Do we?" "Because the evidence says otherwise. The logs, the footage, the pattern of access, it all points to you. And I should know. I'm the one who found it." "Yeah." David held his gaze. "I bet you did." For just a moment something flickered behind Marcus's eyes. Something cold and calculating. Then it was gone, replaced by that smooth professional mask. "Ms. Chen is waiting," he said. "Let's not keep her." Victoria's office door was open when they arrived. She was standing by the window, her back to them, looking out at the city below. "Ms. Chen," Marcus said. "Mr. Miller is here." "Thank you, Marcus. You can go." Marcus hesitated. "Are you sure I could stay in case—" "I said you can go." There was steel in her voice. Marcus nodded. Once shot David a look that promised this wasn't over, and left, closing the door behind him. Victoria didn't turn around. "Sit down, Mr. Miller." David sat in one of the chairs facing her desk, the same chair he realized where nervous job applicants probably sat hoping to impress, the same chair where executives probably sat reporting their quarterly numbers. Now it was where accused criminals sat waiting to hear their fate. "I've been thinking about you," Victoria said, still facing the window. "About what you said yesterday. About Marcus." David's heart jumped. "You have—" "I ran a background check on you last night. 18 years in the Marines, 2 tours in Afghanistan, Purple Heart, honorable discharge." She finally turned to face him. "Then your wife got sick, and you left a promising career in IT security to take care of her. After she died, you took a janitor job at this company because it was the only thing with flexible enough hours to care for your daughter." David didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. "That doesn't sound like the profile of a corporate spy to me." Victoria continued moving to sit behind her desk. "That sounds like a man who's been through hell and is just trying to survive." "Then why am I here?" Victoria leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "Because I need to know the truth. Not what the evidence says. Not what Marcus says. The truth. David took a breath. The truth is that 6 months ago I found a hidden program in your server room. It was copying files and sending them to an outside server. I tried to report it, but nobody would listen to me. I was just a janitor. So I started investigating on my own. I took photos, notes, dates, everything. I kept it all in my locker. Which is now empty, Victoria said flatly. We checked. There was nothing in it except a granola bar and a photograph. Of course there wasn't, because whoever is really behind this knew exactly where to look. And you think that person is Marcus Webb. I know it is. Victoria was silent for a long moment. Her face was unreadable, a mask that David couldn't penetrate. Marcus has been with this company for 5 years, she said finally. He's saved us from 3 major security breaches. He's the reason we have the cybersecurity infrastructure we have today. And you're asking me to believe that he's the one selling our secrets. I'm asking you to consider the possibility. Based on what? The word of a janitor who was caught red-handed. David felt his frustration rising. I wasn't caught doing anything. I was set up. There's a difference. Is there? Victoria's voice was sharp now. Because from where I'm sitting it looks exactly the same. You had access. You had opportunity. And now you're trying to blame someone else to save yourself. Why would I do it? David demanded. Why would I risk everything, my job, my freedom, my daughter's future for money? I've been poor my whole life, Ms. Chen. I know how to live with nothing. What I can't live with is being called a thief when I'm innocent. The words hung in the air between them. Victoria stared at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Not quite belief, but not quite dismissal either. Something in between. My father used to say that you can tell a lot about a man by how he acts when he's cornered, she said quietly. A guilty man makes excuses. An innocent man gets angry. And which one am I? I don't know yet. She stood up and walked back to the window. But I'm going to find out. I've hired an independent forensic team to review the evidence. They start tomorrow. Until they're finished, the criminal charges are on hold. David felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If they find anything that confirms your guilt, I'll personally make sure you spend the next 20 years in prison. She turned to face him. But if they find something else, if there's even a hint that you're telling the truth, I need you to be ready. Ready for what? To help me catch a traitor. David stood up, his legs slightly unsteady. I'll do whatever it takes. Victoria nodded, then pressed a button on her desk phone. Rebecca, please escort Mr. Miller out. Through the back entrance. The back entrance? David asked. Marcus doesn't need to know about this conversation. Not yet. Victoria's eyes met his. Be careful, Mr. Miller. If you're right about him, then you're not just dealing with a thief. You're dealing with someone who's willing to destroy an innocent man to protect himself. That makes him dangerous. I've dealt with dangerous before. I hope so, because if this goes wrong, it won't just be your life on the line. She paused. It'll be mine, too. Rebecca appeared at the door, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She led David down a service corridor he'd walked 100 times before, past supply closets and maintenance rooms to a back exit that opened onto a quiet side street. Mr. Miller, Rebecca said before he left. For what it's worth, I don't think you did it either. You always said good morning. The other janitors never did. David managed a small smile. Thank you, Rebecca. Good luck. He was going to need it. David drove straight to Patricia Okonkwo's office after leaving Chen Technologies. She was with a client, but when he explained what had happened, she cleared her schedule immediately. This is good news, Patricia said, reviewing the notes she'd scribbled while he talked. If Chen is bringing in an independent team, it means she has doubts. That's more than we could have hoped for. But what if they don't find anything? What if Marcus has covered his tracks too well? Then we fight with what we have. But let's not borrow trouble. Right now, we focus on what we can control. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Tell me more about this Frank Morrison, the security guard. You trust him? With my life. Good. Because if Marcus is as smart as you say he is, he's probably already suspicious that you're not just going to roll over. He'll be watching. And that means we need eyes inside that building, eyes that aren't connected to you. Frank's been doing that already. He called me the other night, told me he saw Marcus going into the server room at midnight. Patricia's eyebrows rose. That's useful. Can he document it? Times, dates, anything concrete? I don't know. I don't want to ask him to risk his job. David, I understand your loyalty, but if Frank is willing to help, we need everything he can give us. A 70-year-old security guard isn't going to be the first person Marcus suspects. That makes him our best asset. David nodded slowly. She was right. He hated putting Frank in danger. But if they were going to take down Marcus, they needed proof. Real proof, not just accusations and theories. I'll talk to him. Good. In the meantime, I want you to write down everything you remember about those 6 months of investigation. Every detail, no matter how small. The dates of the data transfers, the offices that were accessed, the times you saw Marcus in the building, after hours, everything. I already started that. It's on a legal pad at home. Then finish it. And David. Patricia's expression was serious. Don't talk to anyone else about this. Not your neighbors, not your friends, not even Mrs. Patterson. The fewer people who know what we're doing, the safer you'll be. I understand. And for God's sake, don't go anywhere near Chen Technologies. Not until this is over. That would be harder. The building had been David's second home for 3 years. His locker, his supplies, his routine, everything familiar was in that building. But he'd find a way. He always did. David picked Lily up from school at 3:15, same as always. She came running out of the building with her backpack bouncing and a piece of paper clutched in her hand. Daddy? Look what I made. It was a drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of a house with a yellow sun and a rainbow overhead. At the top, in Lily's careful handwriting, my family. It's beautiful pumpkin. Mrs. Rodriguez said we could draw anything we wanted, so I drew us. Lily pointed at the smaller figure. That's me. And that's you. And that's our house. I love it. I was going to draw Mommy too, but I ran out of time. I'll add her later, okay? David's throat tightened. Okay, sweetheart. That sounds perfect. They walked to the car hand in hand, Lily chattering about her day. Who said what at lunch, what games they played at recess, how Maya had gotten in trouble for talking too much during reading time. Normal things. Kid things. David tried to focus on her voice, on her happiness, on the simple joy of being her father. But part of his mind was still back in Victoria Chen's office, replaying the conversation, analyzing every word. She believed him. Or at least she wanted to believe him. That was something. But Marcus was smart. Smarter than David, probably. If the forensic team didn't find anything concrete, Victoria's goodwill would evaporate, and then David would be right back where he started, accused, alone, and running out of time. Daddy. He blinked. Lily was staring at him with that concerned expression that made her look so much like Sarah. Sorry, Pumpkin, what did you say? I said, can we get ice cream? You promised last week, remember? Had he promised that he honestly couldn't remember? The last week had been such a blur. Sure, he said. Ice cream sounds great. Lily cheered, and for a moment everything else faded away. The accusations, the fear, the uncertainty, none of it mattered. All that mattered was his daughter's smile and the promise of chocolate chip cookie dough on a sunny afternoon. They stopped at the little ice cream shop on Main Street, the one Sarah had loved. Lily got her usual strawberry with sprinkles, and David got coffee flavor more out of habit than hunger. They sat at one of the outdoor tables watching the world go by. Daddy, Lily said between licks, did your meeting go okay today? It went better than I expected. Is your boss still mad at you? David considered how to answer. I think she's trying to understand what happened. Sometimes grown-ups get confused about things, and it takes time to figure out the truth. Lily nodded seriously. Like when Maya thought I took her eraser, but it was actually Jake. Exactly like that. Maya said sorry after, and we're still best friends. Lily looked at him with those big brown eyes. Maybe your boss will say sorry too. Maybe she will pumpkin. And then everything will be okay, right? David reached across the table and took her hand. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it's okay. I promise. It was a promise he intended to keep. That night, after Lily was asleep, David called Frank. I was wondering when you'd reach out, Frank said. His voice was low cautious. I can't talk long. The new night supervisor is paranoid as hell. I need your help, Frank. More than just watching. I need documentation. Times, dates, anything you can get on Marcus Webb's movements. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That's risky, David. If he catches me. I know, and I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. But Victoria Chen brought in an independent forensic team. If they find something, great. But if they don't, you might be my only shot. Frank was quiet for a long moment. David could hear the faint hum of the building's HVAC system in the background, a sound he'd grown so familiar with over 3 years of late nights. You know, Frank said finally, I've been watching that man for months. Something about him never sat right. The way he moves through this building like he owns it. The way everyone treats him like some kind of golden boy. He snorted. I've seen his type before. In the army, we called them Blue Falcons. You know what that means? David did. It was military slang for someone who betrayed their own people. Yeah, I know. Well, Marcus Webb is the biggest Blue Falcon I've ever seen. And if there's a chance to take him down, I'm in. Frank, I don't want you to lose your job over this. Son, I'm 68 years old. I've got a pension, a paid-off house, and exactly 0 patience left for men like Marcus Webb. What's he gonna do, fire me? I've been wanting to retire for 2 years anyway. Frank chuckled. Besides, this is the most exciting thing that's happened to me since Nam. Let an old soldier have some fun. Despite everything, David smiled. Thank you, Frank. I mean it. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when that bastard is in handcuffs. There was a noise in the background, footsteps, voices. I gotta go. I'll call you tomorrow night. Same time. Be careful. Always am. The line went dead. David sat at the kitchen table staring at his legal pad full of notes. Names, dates, times, suspicions, all of it swirling together in a pattern he couldn't quite see. Somewhere in that building, Marcus Webb was sleeping soundly, confident that his plan had worked. Confident that the stupid janitor would take the fall while he walked away with millions. But Marcus had made one mistake. He'd underestimated David Miller. And that was going to cost him everything. The next few days passed in a blur of waiting. Patricia called every morning with updates. The forensic team was making progress, but slowly. Digital evidence was complex, she explained. Every file had to be traced, every log analyzed, every potential lead investigated. Meanwhile, David tried to maintain some semblance of normal life. He made breakfast for Lily. He walked her to the bus stop. He cleaned the apartment, did laundry, paid bills, all the mundane tasks that had once felt like burdens, but now felt like anchors keeping him grounded while the storm raged around him. Every night Frank called with reports. Marcus was here until midnight again, second night in a row. I saw him talking to someone in the parking garage. Didn't recognize the guy. Expensive car though, black Mercedes. He's getting nervous. I can see it in the way he moves, checking over his shoulder, jumping at noises. Something's got him spooked. David filed every detail away, adding to his notes, building a picture of a man who was starting to feel the walls closing in. On Friday morning, Patricia called with news. The forensic team found something. David's heart stopped. What? I don't have all the details yet, but Victoria Chen wants to meet with us, both of us, this afternoon, 2 o'clock. Is it good news or bad news? Honestly, I don't know. But the fact that she's willing to meet means something. If the evidence was conclusive against you, she wouldn't bother. David drove to Patricia's office at noon. They spent 2 hours reviewing everything they had. Frank's observations. David's notes, the timeline of events leading up to his termination. By the time they left for Chen Technologies, David felt as prepared as he was ever going to be. The meeting was in a conference room on the executive floor, far from Marcus Webb's office. Victoria was already there when they arrived, along with 2 people David didn't recognize, a man and a woman in business attire, laptops open in front of them. Mr. Miller. Miss Okonkwo, please sit down. Victoria's voice was neutral, professional. This is James Chen and Dr. Sophia Rivera, the lead investigators from Cyber Trust Solutions. David sat across from them, his hands clasped on the table to stop them from trembling. Let me cut right to it, James Chen said. He was a slim man in his 40s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. We've been analyzing the data breach at this company for 3 days. What we found is complicated. Dr. Rivera pulled up something on her laptop and turned the screen toward David. This is a visualization of the data transfers that occurred over the past 6 months. Each line represents a transmission of files to an external server. The screen showed a web of lines, dozens of them stretching from a central point to destinations across the globe. Now here's the interesting part. She clicked something and several of the lines turned red. These transmissions occurred during times when you, Mr. Miller, were logged into the building. David's stomach dropped. I was cleaning. I didn't. Let me finish. Dr. Rivera held up a hand. These other transmissions, she clicked again, and more lines turned blue, occurred during times when you were not in the building. In fact, some of them happened on days when your badge showed no activity at all. Patricia leaned forward. You're saying the transfers continued even when my client wasn't present? Exactly. James Chen took over. If Mr. Miller were the culprit, we would expect the transfers to correlate with his access patterns. Instead, we see transfers happening at all hours, regardless of his presence. That suggests someone else was involved, someone with more comprehensive access to the system. Victoria's expression was unreadable. What else did you find? Dr. Rivera hesitated, glancing at her colleague. This is where it gets complicated. The data transfers were routed through a program hidden in the maintenance scheduling software. It's sophisticated military-grade encryption, multiple layers of obfuscation. Whoever designed this knew exactly what they were doing. And do you know who designed it? Patricia asked. Another pause. We have a theory, but we need to do more investigation before we can confirm it. What we can say is that the architecture of this program is consistent with someone who has deep knowledge of Chen Technologies' security infrastructure, someone who helped build it. David felt his heart pounding. They were talking about Marcus. They had to be. Victoria stood up and walked to the window, her back to the room. Thank you, Dr. Rivera. Mr. Chen. Please continue your investigation and report back to me by Monday. The investigators nodded, gathered their things, and left. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Victoria turned around. It seems I may have made a mistake, Mr. Miller. David didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to rage, to demand an apology, to remind her of the humiliation she'd put him through. But another part, the part that had learned patience through years of hardship, understood that anger wouldn't help anyone. I just want the truth to come out, he said finally. That's all I've ever wanted. And it will. Victoria's eyes met his. But we're not there yet. Until the investigators can definitively prove who was behind this, you're still technically a suspect. I can't publicly exonerate you without risking the entire investigation. Patricia spoke up. What are you proposing? Victoria sat back down at the table. I'm proposing a partnership. Mr. Miller knows this building better than almost anyone. He's been watching, observing, documenting things that might not show up in any log file. If we're going to catch the real culprit, we need his help. You want me to help you catch Marcus Webb? David said. Victoria's expression flickered the first crack in her professional mask. I want you to help me catch whoever is responsible. If that's Marcus, then yes. She paused. But I need to be certain. Marcus has been with this company for 5 years. He saved us from multiple security breaches. If I'm going to accuse him of betraying everything we've built, I need proof that will hold up in court. David thought about Frank's reports, the late-night visits to the server room, the nervous glances, the man in the black Mercedes. I can help you get that proof, he said, but I have one condition. Name it. When this is over, when the real culprit is caught and my name is cleared, I want a public apology. Not for me, for my daughter. She's 7 years old and kids at school have been asking her why her father is a criminal. I want her to be able to hold her head up and know that her father is innocent. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. You have my word, Mr. Miller. When this is over, I will personally make sure that everyone knows the truth. David extended his hand across the table. Victoria took it. And for the first time since that coffee cup had shattered against the wall, David allowed himself to hope. The handshake lasted only a moment, but David felt something shift in the room. An alliance had been formed, fragile, tentative, but real. For the first time since this nightmare began, he wasn't fighting alone. So what's the plan? Patricia asked, ever practical. Victoria released David's hand and sat back down. The forensic team needs more time to trace the external servers. In the meantime, we need to catch Marcus in the act. If he's really behind this, he won't stop now. The data he's been selling is too valuable, and whoever he's working with won't let him walk away. Frank Morrison, David said, the night security guard. He's been watching Marcus for weeks. He can help us. Victoria's eyebrows rose. You have someone inside already? Frank's a good man. Vietnam veteran. He doesn't trust Marcus any more than I do. Can he be discreet? He kept me informed this whole time without anyone noticing. Yeah, he can be discreet. Victoria nodded slowly. All right, I want you to coordinate with him. Find out Marcus's patterns, his routines when he's most likely to access the servers. The forensic team will set up monitoring on the system, but we need eyes on the ground. And what about me? David asked. I can't exactly walk into the building anymore. No, you can't. But you can be nearby. If Frank sees something, he calls you. If you see something, you call me directly. She slid a business card across the table. My personal cell. Use it only for emergencies. David took the card and slipped it into his pocket. What happens when we catch him? We call the police. Let them handle the arrest. I want everything done by the book. No vigilante justice, no confrontations that could compromise the case. Victoria's eyes were hard. I want Marcus Webb to spend the rest of his life in prison. That means we do this right. Understood. Patricia stood up, gathering her briefcase. I'll start preparing the legal paperwork for David's exoneration. When this breaks, we need to be ready to move fast. Agreed. Victoria stood as well. Mr. Miller, I know I haven't given you any reason to trust me, but I want you to know if I'm wrong about Marcus. If there's someone else involved, I'll find them. Whoever did this to you will pay. David looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Behind the power suits and the corner office, he saw something he hadn't expected. Exhaustion, fear, the weight of running a company that had been betrayed from within. You're not wrong about Marcus, he said quietly. I've watched him for 6 months. The way he moves through that building, the way he looks at people like they're pieces on a chessboard. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. That's going to be his downfall. Victoria's expression softened just slightly. I hope you're right, Mr. Miller, for both our sakes. David called Frank that night from the parking lot of a grocery store 3 blocks from his apartment. Paranoia had become second nature. He didn't trust that his home phone wasn't being monitored, and he'd started leaving his cell phone behind when he made sensitive calls. Victoria Chen is on board, David said without preamble. She's bringing in the cavalry. Frank whistled low. Well, I'll be damned. How'd you manage that? The forensic team found holes in the evidence against me. Transfers that happened when I wasn't even in the building. It's not enough to nail Marcus yet, but it's enough to make her doubt. So what's the play? We watch. We wait. We document everything. When Marcus makes his move, we need to be ready. He's getting antsy, Frank said. I can feel it. Tonight he came in at 11, went straight to the server room, stayed for 2 hours. Didn't even pretend to work on anything else. Just sat there at the terminal typing away. Could you see what he was doing? Nah, the angle was wrong. But I got the times logged. And David... Frank's voice dropped. He made a phone call when he left, walked all the way to the parking garage to make it. Didn't want anyone to hear. Did you catch any of it? Just the end. He said something like, "It has to be tonight. They're getting too close." Then he got in his car and drove off. David's blood ran cold. Tonight, Frank, are you sure? Sure as I've ever been about anything. Whatever he's planning, it's happening soon. David's mind raced. If Marcus was making his final move tonight, they had hours at most. The forensic team wouldn't be ready. The police wouldn't be in position. Everything they'd built could fall apart if Marcus managed to cover his tracks and disappear. Frank, I need you to do something for me. Something dangerous. Name it. If Marcus comes back tonight, I need you to delay him. Find some excuse, a security check, a fire alarm test, anything. Just give me time to get there. Get there, David. You can't come to the building. You'll be arrested on site. Not if I use the service entrance on the east side. The one by the loading dock. You still have the override code. Frank was silent for a moment. Yeah, I got it. But David, this is crazy. If you get caught, then I get caught. But I'm not going to sit at home while Marcus destroys the evidence and walks away. Not after everything he's done. Another pause. Then Frank sighed heavily. You're a stubborn son of a gun, you know that. So I've been told. All right. If he shows up, I'll buy you as much time as I can. But David, be careful. Marcus isn't stupid. If he sees you, he won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to protect himself. I know. That's what I'm counting on. David drove home with his heart pounding and his mind churning through possibilities. He had maybe 6 hours before midnight. 6 hours to prepare for a confrontation that could either save his life or destroy it completely. When he walked through the door, Mrs. Patterson was sitting on the couch with Lily reading a picture book about a brave little mouse who saved her family from a cat. Daddy! Lily jumped up and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Mrs. Patterson let me stay up late because you were gone so long. We're reading about Penelope the mouse. She's so brave. David hugged her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. That sounds like a great story, Pumpkin. Mrs. Patterson rose from the couch, her eyes searching David's face. She'd known him long enough to read his moods, and right now she didn't like what she saw. Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go brush your teeth and get ready for bed? Your daddy and I need to talk for just a minute. But I want to finish the story. We'll finish it tomorrow, I promise. Now scoot. Lily pouted, but obeyed, dragging her feet dramatically as she headed toward the bathroom. The moment she was out of earshot, Mrs. Patterson turned to David. What's happened? I can't tell you everything, Eleanor, but I need a favor, a big one. Anything. David took a breath. Tonight I have to go out. Late. I don't know when I'll be back, and I can't explain why. But I need you to stay with Lily. If something happens to me... David, you're scaring me. I know. I'm scaring myself. He met her eyes. But this is something I have to do. For Lily. For Sarah. For everything I've been fighting for. Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. You listen to me, David Miller. I've watched you raise that little girl for 3 years. I've seen you work yourself to the bone, sacrifice everything, give up every dream you ever had just to make sure she was safe and loved. You are the best father I have ever known, and I will not let you throw that away on some fool's errand. Eleanor. I'm not finished. Her grip tightened. If you have to do this, then you do it. But you come back. You hear me? That little girl needs her father, and I am too old to raise another child. So whatever you're walking into tonight, you walk back out. Promise me. David felt his throat tighten. I promise. Good. She released his hand and straightened her cardigan. Now go say goodnight to your daughter. I'll be here when you get back. Lily was in bed when David came in, her stuffed penguin tucked under her arm and her eyes already heavy with sleep. Daddy, Mrs. Patterson said you have to go out tonight. Just for a little while, Pumpkin. I'll be back before you wake up. Is it for work? David hesitated. Sort of. There's something important I have to do. Is it scary? He sat on the edge of her bed and brushed the hair back from her forehead. A little bit. But you know what I was just thinking about Penelope the mouse. How she was scared too, but she did the brave thing anyway. Lily nodded seriously. She had to save her family. That's right. And sometimes we have to do scary things to protect the people we love. That's what being brave means. Are you protecting us, Daddy? I'm trying, sweetheart. I'm trying so hard. Lily reached up and patted his cheek with her small hand. You're the bravest daddy in the whole world. Even braver than Penelope. David's eyes burned. Thank you, Pumpkin. That means everything to me. Daddy. Yeah. When you come back, can we have pancakes for breakfast? The ones with the chocolate chips. David smiled even as his heart was breaking. Absolutely. The biggest chocolate chip pancakes you've ever seen. Promise? Promise. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, letting his lips linger there for just a moment, memorizing the feel of her skin, the sound of her breathing, the warmth of her small body under the covers. I love you, Lily. More than anything in this world. I love you too, Daddy. To Jupiter's 67 moons and back. And back again. He turned off the light and closed the door, and then he stood in the hallway with his hand pressed against the wood, gathering his strength for what was to come. David left the apartment at 11:30. The drive to Chen Technologies took 20 minutes. He parked 3 blocks away in the lot of a 24-hour gym and walked the rest of the way through streets that were empty except for the occasional passing car. The building loomed against the night sky, its glass facade reflecting the city lights. Most of the floors were dark, but David could see a few offices still lit on the upper levels. Security, probably. Maybe cleaning crews. Maybe Marcus. His phone buzzed. A text from Frank. He's here. Came in 10 minutes ago. Going to server room now. David's heart hammered as he typed back, On my way. East entrance. Ready when you are. David circled around to the east side of the building, staying in the shadows, avoiding the security cameras he knew so well from 3 years of working late nights. The service entrance was tucked behind a dumpster barely visible from the street. He punched in the override code Frank had given him. The door clicked open. David slipped inside and found himself in the familiar maze of maintenance corridors he'd walked 1,000 times before. The smell of industrial cleaner and recycled air hit him like a wave of nostalgia and something else. Fear. He moved quickly, keeping his footsteps light, heading for the stairwell that would take him up to the 4th floor where the main server room was located. His phone buzzed again. Frank, security check in 5. I'll keep them busy. You have maybe 15 minutes. 15 minutes. It would have to be enough. David climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his legs burning, his breath coming in short gasps. 3 years of pushing a mop hadn't kept him in the shape he'd been in during his Marine days, but the adrenaline coursing through his veins made up for it. He reached the 4th floor and paused at the door, listening. Silence. He eased the door open and peered into the hallway. Empty. The server room was at the end of the corridor. Its door closed, a faint light visible through the small window. Marcus was in there. David could feel it. He crept down the hallway, hugging the wall, every sense on high alert. 20 feet. 15. 10. He was almost at the door when his phone rang. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. David fumbled for the device, silencing it, but it was too late. Through the window, he saw Marcus's head snap up from the terminal. Their eyes met through the glass. For a frozen moment, neither of them moved. Then Marcus bolted for the back exit. "No!" David threw open the door and sprinted after him. "Marcus, stop!" Marcus was fast, but David was faster. Years of Marine training kicked in as he closed the distance between them, his legs pumping, his arms driving. Marcus hit the emergency exit at the end of the hallway and burst through, setting off an alarm that shrieked through the building. They were in another stairwell now, Marcus scrambling up toward the roof, David right behind him. "Give it up, Marcus. It's over." "Go to hell." Marcus's voice was ragged with panic. "You don't know what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. You sold out your own company. You framed an innocent man." They burst through the rooftop door into the cold night air. Marcus stumbled, nearly falling, then whirled around to face David. In his hand was a small device, some kind of transmitter, David realized. "Stay back." Marcus held up the device. "One button and I wipe every server in this building. 20 years of data gone. Chen Technologies will be finished." David stopped, his chest heaving. "You'd destroy everything, even your own work." "My work." Marcus laughed bitterly. "My work made this company what it is. And what did I get? A salary. Stock options. A pat on the head while Victoria Chen played CEO with her daddy's money." His finger hovered over the button. "I deserved more. I earned more." "So you sold out to the competition." "I sold out to the highest bidder. There's a difference." Marcus's eyes were wild now, desperate. "Do you have any idea how much data I have? Client lists, proprietary algorithms, security protocols. It's worth millions. Tens of millions. And all I had to do was let them blame the janitor." "And you could live with that, destroying an innocent man's life." "Innocent," Marcus sneered. "You're a nobody, Miller. A floor mopper. A has-been who peaked in his 20s and has been sliding downhill ever since. Nobody was going to miss you. Nobody was even going to remember your name." David felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, not fear, just a quiet certainty that he was looking at a man who had lost his soul. "You're wrong about that," David said softly. "There's a little girl at home who knows my name, and I made her a promise that I was coming back." Touching. Really. Marcus's finger tightened on the button. "But I'm afraid this is where your story ends. When I press this button, the servers will fry, all the evidence will be destroyed, and I'll tell security that you attacked me on the roof. Who do you think they'll believe, the trusted security chief, or the disgraced janitor who broke into the building in the middle of the night? They'll believe the truth." "The truth?" Marcus laughed again. "The truth is whatever I say it is. That's how power works, Miller. That's something you'll never understand." David took a step forward. "Put down the device, Marcus. This doesn't have to end badly." "Stay back." "You're not going to press that button. You know why. Because if you destroy those servers, you destroy your leverage. You'll have nothing to bargain with, nothing to sell. You'll be just another criminal with no way out." Marcus's hand trembled. "I'll take my chances." "Will you?" "Because right now the police are on their way. Victoria Chen knows everything. The forensic team has traced the transfers back to you. It's over, Marcus. The only question is whether you go down fighting or whether you walk away with some dignity." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" David pulled out his phone and showed Marcus the screen. A text from Victoria. "Police en route. ETA 5 minutes. Keep him talking." Marcus's face went pale. 5 minutes, David said. "That's all you have left. So what's it going to be? Are you going to spend the rest of your life in prison as a corporate spy? Or are you going to spend it as a murderer too?" The word hung in the air between them. Murder. Because that's what it would be if Marcus pressed that button. Not just destruction of property, but destruction of everything David had worked for, everything he had promised Lily. Marcus stared at him, his hand still raised, his finger still hovering over the button. And then slowly his arm dropped to his side. "You win," he said, his voice hollow. "You win, janitor." David walked forward and took the device from Marcus's unresisting hand. "I'm not a janitor anymore, and you're not a security chief. We're just two men standing on a roof waiting for the consequences of our choices." Marcus sank to his knees, all the fight gone out of him. "How did you know? How did you figure it out?" "I watched you, every night for 6 months. I saw the way you looked at people, the way you moved through the building like you owned it. And I saw the way you looked at me like I was nothing, like I was invisible." David crouched down to Marcus's level. "That was your mistake. You underestimated the people you thought didn't matter. And we're the ones who see everything." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The rooftop door burst open, and Frank Morrison stepped through, followed by 2 uniformed security guards. "David?" Frank's face split into a grin. "You crazy son of a gun. You actually did it." "I had help." Frank walked over and looked down at Marcus, shaking his head slowly. 5 years I watched you strut around this building like you were God's gift to technology. Turns out you were just another thief in a nice suit." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing left to say. More sirens now, and the sound of cars screeching to a halt in the parking lot below. Within minutes, the roof was swarming with police officers, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, their voices barking commands. David stepped back as they handcuffed Marcus and read him his rights. He watched as the man who had tried to destroy his life was hauled to his feet and led toward the stairs, head bowed, shoulders slumped. "Mr. Miller." David turned. Victoria Chen was standing in the rooftop doorway, her hair disheveled, her coat thrown hastily over what looked like pajamas. "Ms. Chen, I didn't expect you to come personally." "Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss this for the world." She walked over to stand beside him, both of them watching as Marcus was escorted away. "The forensic team called me 20 minutes ago. They traced the final transfer to an offshore account in Marcus's name. We have everything we need." "So it's really over." "It's really over." Victoria turned to face him. "Mr. Miller, David, I don't even know where to begin. What I did to you, what I put you through. You did what you thought was right. The evidence pointed to me. I don't blame you for believing it. You should. I fired you in front of your daughter. I accused you of crimes you didn't commit. I almost destroyed your life because I was too proud to consider that I might be wrong." David was quiet for a moment. "My wife used to say that the measure of a person isn't whether they make mistakes. It's whether they're willing to admit them and make things right. Your wife sounds like she was a wise woman." She was. David looked out at the city lights spread below them. "She would have liked you, I think. 2 stubborn women who don't take crap from anyone." Victoria laughed a real laugh, surprised and genuine. "I'll take that as a compliment." It was meant as one. They stood in silence for a moment, the cold wind whipping around them, the chaos of the police activity fading into background noise. "So what happens now?" David asked. "Now we rebuild. The company, your reputation, everything Marcus tried to destroy." Victoria turned to face him fully. "And I meant what I said in my office. When this is done, everyone will know the truth about what you did, about who you really are. I'm just a janitor, Ms. Chen." "No." Victoria shook her head firmly. "You're a hero, and it's time people started treating you like one." David thought about Lily asleep at home, dreaming of chocolate chip pancakes. He thought about Mrs. Patterson keeping watch in his living room. He thought about Frank, who had risked everything to help a friend. And he thought about Sarah, somewhere out there watching over all of them. "I should get home," he said quietly. "I promised my daughter pancakes." Victoria smiled. "Then you should go. But David, come see me on Monday. We have a lot to discuss about your future. My future? Did you really think I was going to let the man who saved my company go back to mopping floors? Victoria's eyes sparkled with something like mischief. We'll talk Monday. Now go home to your daughter. David nodded, shook her hand one more time, and walked toward the stairs. Behind him, the sun was just beginning to rise over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was going to be a beautiful day. David pulled into his apartment complex, just as the first rays of sunlight hit the windshield. His hands were still trembling slightly on the steering wheel, the adrenaline of the past few hours slowly draining from his system, leaving behind an exhaustion so deep he could feel it in his bones. But beneath the exhaustion was something else. Something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. He sat in the car for a moment, just breathing, letting the reality sink in. Marcus was in custody. The evidence was secure. His name would be cleared. After months of fighting, of watching his life crumble around him, he had finally won. His phone buzzed. A text from Frank. Hell of a night, soldier. Get some rest. You earned it. David smiled and typed back, couldn't have done it without you, Frank. Thank you for everything. Buy me a beer sometime and we'll call it even. Deal. He climbed out of the car and walked toward his apartment, his legs heavy, his mind already drifting toward the promise he'd made to Lily. Chocolate chip pancakes, the biggest ones she'd ever seen. Mrs. Patterson was asleep on the couch when he opened the door, a blanket pulled up to her chin, her reading glasses still perched on her nose. David gently removed the glasses and set them on the coffee table, then covered her more securely with the blanket. She stirred slightly. David, is that you? It's me, Eleanor. Everything's okay. Go back to sleep. Did you? It's over. I'll tell you everything later. But right now I need to make some pancakes. Mrs. Patterson's eyes fluttered open and she looked at him. Really looked at him, and whatever she saw made her smile. You did it, didn't you? Yeah, David's voice cracked slightly. I did it. She reached up and patted his cheek just like Lily always did. I knew you would. Now go. Your daughter's been asking about those pancakes since 5 o'clock this morning. David found Lily already awake, sitting up in bed with her stuffed penguin, her eyes bright with anticipation. Daddy, you came back. I told you I would, pumpkin. He scooped her up in his arms and held her close, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. I always keep my promises. Is the scary thing over? The scary thing is over. Did you win? David laughed, surprising himself. Yeah, sweetheart, we won. Lily pulled back and studied his face with that serious expression that made her look so much older than 7. You look tired, Daddy. I am tired. But you know what, I'm also really, really happy. Happy enough for chocolate chip pancakes. Happy enough for the biggest chocolate chip pancakes in the history of the universe. Lily's squeal of delight was worth everything. Every sleepless night, every moment of fear, every time he'd wondered if he was going to lose everything, it was all worth it for that sound. They made pancakes together, Lily standing on her step stool at the counter, carefully counting out chocolate chips, while David mixed the batter. Mrs. Patterson joined them, eventually accepting a cup of coffee and watching the father-daughter duo with misty eyes. Eleanor, will you stay for breakfast? David asked. I thought you'd never ask. They ate at the small kitchen table, all 3 of them, the morning sun streaming through the windows, laughter filling the apartment for the first time in what felt like forever. Lily chattered about school, about Maya, about the upcoming spring fair. David listened and nodded and smiled, but part of him was somewhere else processing everything that had happened, everything that was about to change. After breakfast, while Lily was getting dressed for school, Mrs. Patterson pulled David aside. Are you going to tell me what happened? The short version. The man who framed me was arrested last night. The evidence proves I'm innocent. My name will be cleared. Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her chest. Oh, David. Oh, thank God. There's more. Victoria Chen, my boss, she wants to meet with me on Monday to talk about my future at the company. Your future? But I thought, so did I. But apparently she has other plans. David shook his head, still barely believing it himself. She called me a hero. Eleanor, me, a janitor. You are a hero, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. You always have been. It just took the rest of the world a little while to catch up. David hugged her, then this woman who had been his lifeline through the darkest years of his life. Thank you, Eleanor, for everything, for staying with Lily, for believing in me, for never giving up. Oh, hush. She patted his back, but he could hear the emotion in her voice. That's what family does. The next few days passed in a blur of interviews and paperwork. The police took David's statement, then took it again, then asked him to clarify a dozen different details. Patricia was with him through all of it, guiding him through the legal process with the patience of a saint. The DA is very interested in your case, she told him after one particularly long session. Marcus Webb isn't just facing corporate espionage charges anymore. They've connected him to a network of buyers across 3 continents. This is going to be one of the biggest cases in Silicon Valley history. And my role in it? You're the star witness. Without your observations, your documentation, your willingness to risk everything to catch him, none of this would have happened. Patricia smiled. David, you're about to become very famous. He didn't want to be famous. He wanted to make pancakes with his daughter and sleep in his own bed, and maybe eventually find some semblance of a normal life. But he understood that normal wasn't in the cards. Not anymore. On Friday afternoon, Victoria Chen called a press conference. David watched it from his living room, Lily beside him on the couch, Mrs. Patterson in the armchair with her knitting. The television showed Victoria standing behind a podium bristling with microphones, her hair perfect, her suit immaculate, every inch the powerful CEO. But David noticed the tremor in her hands, the slight waver in her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm here today to address the events of the past week and to make a public statement about a grave injustice that was committed against one of our employees. David felt Lily's hand slip into his. Several days ago, I terminated David Miller, a member of our custodial staff, based on evidence that suggested he was responsible for a serious data breach at Chen Technologies. That evidence was false. It was fabricated by another employee, Marcus Webb, our former head of IT security, to cover his own criminal activities. The reporters erupted with questions, but Victoria held up her hand for silence. Mr. Miller was not only innocent of the charges against him, he was in fact the person who first discovered the breach and attempted to report it. When his concerns were dismissed, he took it upon himself to investigate further, gathering evidence at great personal risk. His actions directly led to the identification and arrest of the true culprit. Victoria paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. I want to say something directly to David Miller, who I know is watching this. Mr. Miller, I was wrong. I judged you based on your position, your title, the uniform you wore. I assumed that a janitor couldn't possibly have anything valuable to contribute, couldn't possibly understand what was happening in a company like ours. That assumption was arrogant, short-sighted, and deeply unfair. Lily looked up at David, confused. Daddy, why is she crying? Because she's sorry, Pumpkin. She's telling everyone she made a mistake. Oh. Lily thought about this. That's brave. On the screen, Victoria continued. David Miller is not just an employee. He is a hero. He is a Marine veteran who served his country with honor. He is a single father who has sacrificed everything to care for his daughter. And he is a man of integrity who refused to back down even when the entire world was against him. On behalf of Chen Technologies, on behalf of myself, I offer him my deepest apologies and my profound gratitude. She looked directly into the camera. Mr. Miller, I hope you'll give me the opportunity to make this right. Not just with words, but with actions. You deserve so much more than I can ever give you, but I intend to try. The press conference dissolved into chaos, shouted questions, camera flashes, reporters clamoring for more details. But David barely heard any of it. He was thinking about Sarah, about what she would say if she could see this moment. "Daddy." Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Are you okay?" David realized there were tears on his cheeks. He wiped them away quickly and pulled Lily into his lap. "I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm more than okay." "Is the lady going to say sorry to you for real? Not just on TV?" "I think she already did, Pumpkin. But yes, I think she will." "Good." Lily nodded decisively. "Because you deserve a really good sorry. The kind with a hug and everything." David laughed and kissed the top of her head. "You know what? You're absolutely right." Monday morning arrived with a mix of anticipation and nervousness that David hadn't felt since his first day of boot camp. He put on his funeral suit again, he really needed to buy some new clothes, and drove to Chen Technologies for his meeting with Victoria. This time, there was no suspicious security guard at the front desk. Instead, the young man practically jumped to attention when David walked in. "Mr. Miller, Miss Chen is expecting you. Please right this way." David followed him to the elevator, acutely aware of the stares following him across the lobby. But these weren't the hostile stares of last week. These were curious, respectful, even admiring. Word had gotten around. Victoria's office looked different in daylight. Smaller somehow, more human. She stood when he entered, coming around her desk to meet him, rather than waiting behind it like a queen on her throne. "David, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." They stood there for a moment, the weight of everything that had passed between them hanging in the air. Then Victoria did something David didn't expect. She hugged him. It was brief and slightly awkward. Neither of them was particularly good at physical affection, but it was genuine. "I watched your press conference," David said when she stepped back. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. My father built this company on the principle that every person has value, regardless of their position or title. I forgot that. You reminded me." She gestured for him to sit, and they settled into chairs by the window, rather than across her imposing desk. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," Victoria continued, "about how we got here, and I realized something. Marcus didn't just steal data from this company. He stole something more important. He stole our humanity. He created an environment where people were afraid to speak up, where concerns were dismissed, where someone like you could be invisible for 3 years." "I wasn't completely invisible," David said. "Frank saw me. Rebecca saw me. Mrs. Patterson saw me. But I didn't. And I should have." Victoria met his eyes. "David, I want to offer you a job. A real job, not pushing a mop. Our security team has an opening for an analyst, someone who can identify threats that the computers miss, someone who understands how people think. I can't think of anyone better qualified than you." David was quiet for a moment. "That's a generous offer." "It's not generous. It's smart business. You have skills that we need. Skills that could have prevented this entire disaster if anyone had bothered to listen to you." "And the salary." Victoria named a figure that made David's head spin. It was more than he'd made in his entire IT career, more than he'd ever dreamed of earning. "Plus benefits, of course," Victoria added. "Full health coverage for you and Lily. 4 weeks paid vacation. Flexible hours for school events and emergencies." David thought about the medical bills still stacked on his kitchen counter, about the credit card debt he'd been carrying since Sarah's funeral, about the beach trip he'd promised Lily, the one he had no idea how to afford. "Can I think about it?" Victoria blinked clearly, not expecting that response. "Of course. Take all the time you need." "It's just, this is a lot. A week ago I was facing prison. Now you're offering me my dream job. I need to make sure I'm making the right decision for the right reasons." "What reasons would be wrong?" David considered the question. "Pride, revenge, wanting to prove something to all the people who look down on me." He shook his head. "If I take this job, it has to be because it's right for me and Lily. Not because it's a good story. Victoria studied him for a long moment, and something like respect flickered in her eyes. You know, most people in your position would have jumped at this offer without a second thought. They would have seen it as vindication, as proof that they were better than everyone who doubted them. I'm not most people. No, Victoria smiled. You're not. She stood and walked to her desk, picking up a folder. Take this home. It has all the details of the offer, salary, benefits, job description, everything. Read it over. Talk to your daughter. Talk to Mrs. Patterson and Frank and anyone else whose opinion you trust. And when you're ready, give me a call. David took the folder and rose to his feet. Thank you, Victoria. Not just for the job offer, for believing me when it mattered. Thank you for not giving up, even when I gave you every reason to. They shook hands, and David turned to leave. But at the door he paused. Victoria. Yes. My daughter said something the other night. She said I deserved a really good sorry, the kind with a hug and everything. He smiled slightly. I think you delivered. Victoria laughed, that same surprised, genuine laugh he'd heard on the rooftop. Your daughter sounds like a very wise young lady. She gets it from her mother. David walked out of the building into the bright California sunshine. For the first time in 3 years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Not gone, never completely gone, but manageable. Bearable. He pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Patterson. Eleanor, can you stay with Lily a little longer this afternoon? I need to make a stop before I come home. Of course, dear. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. Better than fine. He looked up at the sky, clear blue stretching to the horizon. I just need to talk to someone. The cemetery was quiet this time of day. David walked the familiar path to Sarah's grave, the folder from Victoria tucked under his arm. He'd been here dozens of times since the funeral, but today felt different. Today, he wasn't coming to grieve. He was coming to celebrate. He knelt beside the headstone and traced the letters of her name with his finger. Hey, sweetheart. It's been a while. A bird sang somewhere in the trees above. I know I usually come here to complain, to tell you how hard things are, how much I miss you, how lost I feel without you. But today, I have good news. He told her everything. About Marcus, about Victoria, about the rooftop confrontation and the press conference and the job offer. He told her about Lily's chocolate chip pancakes and Mrs. Patterson's unwavering support and Frank's gruff loyalty. I think I'm going to take the job, he said finally. It's scary starting over at 52, learning new things, working with people half my age. But it's what you would have wanted for me, isn't it? Not playing it safe, not hiding, living. The wind rustled through the grass, and David could almost hear her voice. Love, David. For me. For Lily. For yourself. I will, he whispered. I promise. He stayed there for a long time, just sitting in the quiet, feeling closer to Sarah than he had in months. When he finally stood to leave, his legs were stiff, and the sun was starting to set, but his heart was full. He drove home with the windows down and the radio playing some old song from the 80s that Sarah used to love. By the time he pulled into the parking lot, he was singing along badly and loudly and not caring who heard. Lily was at the window when he walked up, her face pressed against the glass, her breath fogging the pain. Daddy's home, he heard her shout. And then she was gone from the window, and the front door was flying open, and she was running toward him at full speed. He caught her in his arms and swung her around, both of them laughing. Daddy, you're so happy. Did something good happen? A lot of good things happened, Pumpkin. And I think there are more good things coming. Like what? David set her down and knelt to her level, taking her small hands in his. Like a new job for Daddy. A better job where I can use my brain instead of just my mop. And it means we'll have more money for things like beach trips and new shoes, and maybe even a puppy someday. Lily's eyes went wide. A puppy? Maybe. We'll see. And you'll still be home when I get back from school. Even more than before. I'll be able to come to your plays and your soccer games and your parent-teacher conferences. I'll be there for everything, Lily. I promise." Lily threw her arms around his neck and held on tight. "This is the best day ever, Daddy." David held his daughter close, feeling the warmth of her small body against his chest, the fierce strength of her love wrapping around him like armor. "Yeah, pumpkin," he said softly. "It really is." 6 months had passed since that night on the rooftop. David still remembered every detail: the cold wind, the desperate look in Marcus Webb's eyes, the weight of the transmitter in his hand. But those memories had softened, now worn smooth by time and distance like stones tumbled in a river. He thought about it sometimes, usually in the quiet moments before dawn when Lily was still asleep and the apartment was silent. He thought about how close he'd come to losing everything and how different his life was now. Different in ways he never could have imagined. His new office was on the 3rd floor of Chen Technologies, wedged between the marketing department and the legal team. It wasn't big, just a desk, a computer, 2 chairs for visitors, and a small window that looked out over the parking lot. But it was his. On the wall behind his desk hung 3 things: his Marine Corps certificate, a framed photo of Sarah and Lily taken the summer before Sarah got sick, and Lily's drawing of my family, the one with the yellow sun and the rainbow, and the 2 stick figures holding hands. Every morning, David looked at those 3 things and remembered who he was and why he was here. "Miller, you got a minute?" David looked up from his computer to see Tom Chen, Victoria's cousin, and the new head of IT security, standing in his doorway. Tom was 32, brilliant and utterly lacking in the arrogance that had defined his predecessor. "Sure. What's up?" "We've got a weird pattern in the access logs. 3rd shift East Wing. Someone's been swiping in and out at odd hours, but there's no corresponding work being done." David pulled up the logs on his screen and studied them. "Could be someone using the building to sleep. We had a case like that at my last job. Guy was going through a divorce, didn't want to go home, just hung out in the break room all night." "That's what I thought. But look at the timing. It's almost perfectly regular. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. David frowned. Tom was right. The pattern was too consistent to be random. "Have you checked the security cameras?" "Blind spot. Whoever this is knows where the cameras are. That narrows it down. Someone with access to the security layout." Tom nodded. "That's why I came to you. You're the only person in this building who sees things the way they really are, not the way people want them to be." David smiled slightly. "I'll look into it." "Thanks, Miller. I owe you one." After Tom left, David leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. 6 months ago, he would have been the one under suspicion, the invisible janitor with too much access and too few alibis. Now he was the one people came to when something didn't add up. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Daddy, don't forget soccer practice at 4. Coach says we're going to scrimmage." David smiled and typed back, "I'll be there. Score a goal for me." "I'll score 10 goals. That's my girl." He put the phone down and got back to work, but his mind kept drifting to the afternoon ahead. Soccer practice, then dinner, then homework, then bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, and the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. This was his life now. This was what he'd fought for, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. At 3:30, David shut down his computer and headed for the elevator. On the way, he passed Victoria's office and saw her through the glass wall hunched over her desk, surrounded by papers and coffee cups. He knocked on the door frame. "You look like you could use a break." Victoria looked up, and the exhaustion on her face melted into something like relief. "David, please tell me you've come to drag me out of this meeting prep." "I've come to drag you out of this meeting prep." She laughed and stood up, stretching her back. "You're a lifesaver. What's the occasion?" "Lily's soccer practice. I'm heading out early." "Ah, the famous Lily." Victoria walked over to join him by the door. "How's she doing?" "Great. She scored 3 goals last week. Coach says she's got natural talent. Must get it from her father. David snorted. I was terrible at soccer. Sarah was the athlete in the family. Victoria's expression softened at the mention of Sarah. Over the past 6 months, she and David had developed an easy friendship built on mutual respect, shared experience, and the bond that forms between people who have been through something difficult together. I've been meaning to ask you something, Victoria said. And feel free to say no if it's too weird. Now I'm nervous. My company is hosting a charity gala next month. Black tie silent auction, the whole 9 yards. I need a date, and everyone I usually ask has either quit, gotten married, or turned out to be a corporate spy. David stared at her. You're asking me to be your date to a gala? As friends, Victoria added quickly. Purely platonic. I just need someone I can trust not to embarrass me or try to steal company secrets. The bar is very low. You'd be surprised how many people fail to clear it. David thought about it. A gala, black tie, rubbing elbows with the kind of people who used to step over his mop bucket without a glance. Can I bring Lily? Victoria blinked. To a black tie gala. She's been asking about what I do at work. This could be educational. It could also be boring, and long, and full of people making small talk about stock options. She's 7. She can make small talk about anything. Last week she cornered Mrs. Patterson for 45 minutes talking about the mating habits of penguins. Victoria laughed. All right, bring Lily. But if she starts lecturing the board of directors about penguin reproduction, that's on you. Deal. They shook hands, both of them smiling, and David headed for the elevator with a lightness in his step that still surprised him after all these months. He was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. It felt like a miracle. Soccer practice was chaos as usual. 12 7-year-olds running around a field kicking balls in every direction except the goal, while their coach, a patient man named Rodriguez, who deserved a medal, tried to maintain some semblance of order. David sat in the bleachers with the other parents watching Lily chase the ball with fierce determination. She was small for her age, but quick, and she had a competitive streak that reminded him painfully of Sarah. She's getting good, said a voice beside him. David turned to see Frank Morrison lowering himself onto the bench with a grunt. The old man was dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, a battered baseball cap, looking more relaxed than David had ever seen him. Frank, what are you doing here? Came to watch the game. I heard there was a future World Cup star on this team. David grinned. She told you about the 3 goals, didn't she? Called me 5 times to make sure I knew every detail. Frank settled back and watched the kids run around. She's a good kid, David. You've done right by her. I've had help. We all need help. Nothing wrong with that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while watching the practice. Eventually Frank spoke again. I've been thinking about what you said, about me taking the security chief job. David's eyebrows rose. And I think I might actually do it. Frank, that's great. You'd be perfect for it. I'm 68 years old, David. I should be fishing somewhere, not chasing down corporate spies. You caught the last one pretty well. Frank chuckled. I suppose I did. He was quiet for a moment. The truth is, I don't know what I'd do with myself if I retired. My wife's been gone 10 years. My kids are scattered across the country. This job, these people, it's all I've got. David understood that feeling better than he wanted to admit. Then take the job. You've earned it. And Frank, he met the old man's eyes. This company needs people like you. People who see others as human beings, not just employees. People who do the right thing even when it's hard. Frank nodded slowly. You know, 3 years ago I thought you were just another face in the crowd, another janitor who'd be gone in 6 months. What changed your mind? You said good morning, every single day. No matter how tired you were or how much crap you were dealing with, you said good morning and asked how I was doing. Frank shook his head. You'd be amazed how rare that is in this world. It shouldn't be rare. No, it shouldn't. Frank stood up, his knees cracking. I'm gonna go get some coffee. You want anything? I'm good, thanks, Frank. Thank you, David, for everything. David watched him walk away, this grizzled old soldier who had risked his job and his pension to help a janitor he barely knew. The world was full of people like Marcus Webb, selfish, calculating, willing to destroy others to get ahead. But it was also full of people like Frank Morrison. You just had to know where to look. Daddy? Daddy, did you see? Lily came running up to the bleachers, her face flushed with excitement. Grass stains on her knees. I saw Pumpkin. That was an amazing pass. Coach says I'm getting better at teamwork. She climbed up onto the bench beside him. He says soccer isn't just about scoring goals, it's about helping your teammates score too. That's a good lesson. I know, it's like what you always say about work, everybody matters, even the people nobody notices. David's heart swelled. You remember that? Of course I remember. You say it all the time. Lily leaned against his shoulder. Daddy? Yeah, Pumpkin. I'm glad you're not a janitor anymore. Not because janitors are bad or anything, she added quickly. Just because now people can see how smart you are. Before they didn't know. Some people knew. Yeah, but now everyone knows. And that's better, right? David put his arm around her and pulled her close. You know what's better? Having a daughter who understands things that most grown-ups never figure out. I get it from you, Daddy. You get it from your mom. Lily was quiet for a moment. Do you think Mom can see us? Like from heaven or whatever? It was a question she'd asked before many times, and David still didn't have a perfect answer. But he had an honest one. I don't know for sure, sweetheart, but I like to think she can. I like to think she's watching you score goals and do your homework and make your friends laugh. And I think she's really, really proud of the person you're becoming. I think so too. Lily nodded firmly. And I think she's proud of you, Daddy. For not giving up. For being brave. David's throat tightened. Thank you, Lily. That means everything to me. Can we get ice cream on the way home? He laughed, the sudden shift in topic so perfectly Lily that it broke through the emotion like sunlight through clouds. Yeah, Pumpkin, we can get ice cream. The night of the gala arrived faster than David expected. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, wrestling with a bow tie that seemed determined to strangle him, while Lily sat on the edge of the bathtub, in her new dress, a deep purple thing with sparkles that she'd picked out herself after 3 hours of shopping and approximately 1 million outfit changes. Daddy, you're doing it wrong. I know I'm doing it wrong. That's why I'm still doing it. Let me try. Lily, you're 7. You don't know how to tie a bow tie. I watched a video on Mrs. Patterson's phone. It looked easy. Against his better judgment, David knelt down and let Lily take over. Her small fingers worked with surprising precision, and within 30 seconds, the bow tie was perfect. How did you? YouTube, Daddy. You can learn anything on YouTube. David stared at his reflection. I'm going to pretend that doesn't make me feel like a dinosaur. You're not a dinosaur. Dinosaurs are extinct. You're more like a really old turtle. Thank you for that. You're welcome. Mrs. Patterson drove them to the gala. David's Honda Civic didn't quite match the black tie dress code and dropped them off at the entrance to the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel. Lily's eyes went wide as they walked through the doors. Daddy, this is like a castle. It's a hotel, Pumpkin. A castle hotel. Look at the chandeliers, they're so sparkly. David had to admit even he was impressed. The ballroom was filled with people in elegant gowns and tailored tuxedos, waiters gliding through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, music from a live orchestra floating through the air. 6 months ago, he would have been cleaning this place, mopping the floors, emptying the trash, invisible among the glittering guests. Now, he was one of them. Sort of. David, you made it? Victoria appeared from the crowd, stunning in a silver dress that probably cost more than David's car, But her smile was warm and genuine, and when she saw Lily, she actually knelt down to the little girl's level. "And you must be the famous Lily. I've heard so much about you." Lily curtsied, something David was pretty sure she'd learned from a Disney movie, and said very solemnly, "It's nice to meet you, Ms. Chen. Thank you for giving my daddy his job back." Victoria's expression flickered with something like emotion. "Your daddy earned that job back all by himself. I just had the good sense to recognize it." "That's not what he says. He says you were brave to admit you were wrong. Most grown-ups don't do that." Victoria glanced up at David, who shrugged helplessly. "She has a lot of opinions." "I can see that." Victoria stood and offered Lily her hand. "Would you like to see the silent auction? There's a painting of penguins that I think you might like." Lily gasped. "Penguins? Real penguins? A painting of real penguins, by a real artist. Can we go, Daddy? Please." David nodded, and Lily grabbed Victoria's hand and pulled her toward the auction tables with the enthusiasm of a child who has just discovered the greatest treasure in the world. David followed behind, watching them go, feeling something warm spread through his chest. This was his life now. His daughter happy and thriving. His job meaningful and respected. His friends, Victoria, Frank, Mrs. Patterson, Patricia. People who had stood by him when everything fell apart. He had lost so much. Sarah, his career, his dignity, his faith in the basic fairness of the world. But he had also gained something. Something he couldn't quite name, but felt in every moment, every day. A sense of purpose. A reason to keep going. Hope. The gala was a success by any measure. Lily charmed everyone she met, from the board members to the waitstaff. She asked the orchestra conductor about his baton, interrogated a tech billionaire about his rocket company, and convinced Victoria to bid on the penguin painting, which she won for $8,000. "That painting is going in my office," Victoria told David as the auction closed. "Every time I look at it, I'll remember this night." You could just buy a cheaper painting and remember it the same way. Where's the fun in that? At 10 o'clock, with Lily dozing against his shoulder, David said his goodbyes and headed for the exit. But before he reached the door, a familiar voice stopped him. "Mr. Miller." David turned. A man he didn't recognize was approaching, older, distinguished, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who was used to being in charge. "I don't think we've met. I'm Robert Harrison. I was on the board of Chen Technologies for 15 years before I retired last spring." "Pleased to meet you, sir. I've been hearing about you all night. The janitor who saved the company." Harrison smiled slightly. "I have to admit, when Victoria first told me what happened, I didn't believe her. It sounded like something out of a movie." "It felt like something out of a movie." "I imagine it did." Harrison glanced at Lily, still asleep against David's shoulder. "Beautiful daughter." "Thank you. She's the best thing I've ever done. My son says the same thing about his kids." Harrison paused, his expression growing more serious. "Mr. Miller, I wanted to thank you personally, not just for what you did for the company, but for what you showed all of us." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've been in business for 40 years, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about judging people's character. But I would have looked at you, a janitor, a single father, a man with nothing to his name, and I would have dismissed you without a second thought." Harrison shook his head. "You proved me wrong. You proved all of us wrong, and that's a lesson I won't forget." David didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and said, "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." "No, Mr. Miller. Thank you." They shook hands, and Harrison disappeared back into the crowd. David stood there for a moment, holding his sleeping daughter, surrounded by the glittering remnants of a world he'd never expected to be part of. Then he walked out into the night. Mrs. Patterson's car was waiting at the curb. David carefully buckled Lily into the back seat, then climbed in beside her. "How was it?" Mrs. Patterson asked, eyeing him in the rearview mirror. "It was good. Really good." "You sound surprised." "I am surprised. A year ago, I was mopping floors and wondering how I was going to pay for Lily's school supplies. Now I'm attending galas and getting thanked by board members." David shook his head. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Believe it, David. You've earned every bit of it." They drove home through quiet streets, the city lights blurring past the windows. Lily slept the whole way, her head resting against David's arm, her breath soft and even. When they arrived at the apartment, David carried Lily inside and tucked her into bed without waking her. He hung up his tuxedo, changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, and sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water, letting the silence of the apartment settle around him. On the refrigerator, held up by a magnet shaped like a penguin, was a calendar marked with school events and soccer practices and doctor's appointments. Next to it was a photo of Sarah smiling at the camera, forever young, forever beautiful. David looked at that photo for a long time. "I did it, Sarah," he whispered. "I kept my promise. I took care of her. I took care of us." The apartment was silent, but David could have sworn he felt something, a warmth, a presence, a gentle acknowledgement from somewhere beyond. He smiled and finished his water and went to bed. Tomorrow would be another day, another chance to be the father Lily deserved. The employee Chen Technologies needed the man Sarah had always believed he could be. And David Miller was ready for it. He had been knocked down, counted out, dismissed, and degraded, and nearly destroyed. He had been called a janitor, a loser, a nobody. He had been accused of crimes he didn't commit and abandoned by a world that didn't care. But he had never given up. He had never stopped fighting. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the job title, or the salary, or the fancy galas. Not the apologies, or the recognition, or the vindication. What mattered was that he had stayed true to himself when it would have been easier to give in. He had protected his daughter when the whole world was against him. He had proven that a man's worth isn't measured by his position or his paycheck, but by his character, his integrity, his refusal to let injustice go unanswered. David Miller was not a janitor anymore, but he would always be a father. And that was the greatest job in the world. The last thing he saw before sleep claimed him was Sarah's photo on the nightstand, and the last thought in his mind was a simple truth that had taken him 52 years to fully understand. The people who matter most will always see you for who you truly are, not what you do not, what you have not, what the world says about you, but who you are in your heart. When no one is watching, when everything is on the line, when it would be so much easier to walk away. David had been seen, and that had made all the difference.